who is in the, so like Hamish, for example, needs to have his settings changed to be part of the meeting, Karen. So if we see any other members of the board that are entering in via the public link, if we're able to just change their settings to ensure they can fully participate. All right, so meeting was called to order at 3:45. Thank you for all meeting. I'm going to ask Karen to go ahead and do the roll.
Yes. Bob Sartoris.
Here.
Patrice McCarthy.
Here.
Hamish McPhail. He is here.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Mel Horton. Margaret Gustafson.
Here.
Jenny Graves.
Here.
Sarah Larford Simons. Jennifer Delaney.
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you. Tiffany Cowett.
Here.
Elsa Batista.
I'm here.
Kristen Besega.
Here.
Dr. Cynthia Ritchie. And Chairwoman Jen Rodriguez.
Here.
All right.
I think we're missing one additional person called off. I've got 15 people noted. Is there anybody on the call that we did not say their name? Okay, so then we can just do process of elimination afterwards in terms of we did not. So our meeting minutes from today and the 9th will be approved at our April meeting. So we can move right into public comment or participation. I believe Karen had shared the one piece that had come through. So that it becomes part of our public record and the board had an opportunity to read that over. Thank you. Items requiring action. We're going to go into the approval of, we're not going to be doing the approval of the reauthorization because the State Board of Education will be doing that. Instead, as noted in the email, we are going to be going into approval of regulations that were amended in batch 6 through 8. It went before LPDC, the Legislative Policy Development Committee, on Wednesday, and there were some suggestions to amend it. In order to just move things forward, we went ahead and said that we were in agreement with those amendments, but we wanted to make sure the board was fully in agreement of those amendments. If the board is not in agreement of those amendments, then in the March meeting, I will let the State Board of Education know that we are still deliberating those, but I wanted to give us the opportunity to kind of go through some of these technical amendments. So that was shared with you. Oh, Dr. Ritchie is here. Thank you, Dr. Ritchie, for joining us. So Karen, if you could bring up the amendments document, I think I have it coded as VB amendments. Can you make that larger so we're not looking at like the email stuff on the left there? Thank you. And then just zoom in a bit. So that is not the document that I'm looking for. I can go ahead and share the document because we just want to focus in on the ones that are being amended. So if you can go ahead and stop sharing, I will go ahead and share. Thank you. Everyone able to see that? Should I make it any bigger? Make it a little, ooh, that made it very big. Is that good? All right, so I'm gonna go to the top here. So on part 3, types of certification, 10-145D 412, AB4, the original was listed as 36 clock hours. It was recommended by SDE during the LPDC meeting that become 36 semester or 3 semester hours of credit. Does anyone have any concerns about that change?
Can you just say more what is
specifically pertaining to? Because, that's an entire
Yes.
course. That's an entire course at the university. Yeah.
Right. So for this particular part, I think the whole part of it is this part right here. So it says the applicant shall be required to complete a course of study in special education comprised of not fewer than, previously it said 36 clock hours. The recommendation was to change it to 3 semester hours of credit, which would be a typical credit, one course on special education instead of the 36 clock hours. To kind of align it more to the vocabulary that would be used in a ed prep program or a college, university, to align it more with that.
Sure. I know.
Thank you, Dorothea, for the question.
I see other hands, but I just wanted a clarification. Is this like for elementary students? Is this for secondary, or because that would give some context?
So I see Julianne. Let's see if we can get that answered for you right away. Okay. So Julianne and then Kristen. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
So this is the standard special ed course that's required for all certification. And they first began it with 36 clock hours, which is equivalent to 3 credits. And the reason they listed it as clock hours, and it's the only thing that's ever been listed as clock hours, everything else is credits, is because they used to have some CEU modules for administrators, and they could do those modules in lieu of the 3 credits, but those don't exist anymore. We don't have the CEU modules. So just to make it even for everyone to understand, whenever we send credential letters to people saying you need a 36 clock hour course, they say, what does that mean? We're like 3 credits. So it's not anything new. It's always been 3 credits. It's 36 clock hours, and we're just changing the verbiage to make it understandable to everybody.
Okay, and that's
Thank you,
for
Julianne.
all initial.
Yes.
All initial. Yeah.
Thank you. And then Kristen, go ahead.
Yep, I was just going to chime in and give you some background on Regulation 412. That's the regulation that defines the initial educator certificate, and that's true for every initial educator certificate, no matter if it's for, special ed, for elementary. So this is part of the requirements for the initial educator cert.
Perfect. Thank you for the explanation, both Julianne and Kristen. I appreciate that. So with that in mind, that's one part of it. And then the second part of this was changing the language from removing instruction on to be amended to the growth and development of exceptional children, including children with disabilities. So you can see the full paragraph rewritten with those amendments. Is there any question on that part of it? Okay, so then we're going to move down to 412B1. The first set of numbers are all the same. I'm just referring to the last 3 just to make it a bit easier. So on this one, still falls under 412. So we're still talking about that initial. And the recommendation was to remove this entire part, or upon the request of the assessment team reviewing such person's performance. LPDC asked, who is the assessment team? They had a lot of questions around that. And SDE recommended that we really don't even need the language, is what they had stated during that time. So the recommendation was to move it forward without that part of it. Kristen, go ahead.
Yep, and just to give everyone a background, this extension language, when the Regulations Ad Hoc Committee originally met, the reason that we left and included this red underlined language was because it's word for word verbatim from Public Act 2441. So it was in one of those instances where the law allows that you can have an additional year upon the request of this assessment team, but the language is not actually necessary in the regulations because law supersedes regs. So originally the discussion was, do we need to have this? And we decided to keep it because it matches the law. But since the law does supersede regulations, it would be perfectly fine to remove it, and it doesn't change any anything in particular, but we did have that same discussion in the regs ad hoc committee of like, who is meant by the assessment team? Is it the assessment team, like the staff at the certification office who is assessing the applications, or was it the teacher evaluation team within the buildings? So yes, I would think that removing it would not significantly change anything for the applicant because the rest of that language does exist elsewhere in law.
Thank you, Kristen. Patrice, go ahead.
Just help me remember, do we still have the language somewhere in law, for instance, that it can be done up to 3 times, or does it now, if we delete that final section, does it mean that we're only able to grant the extension once? The commissioner is only able to grant the extension once.
There's a whole additional regulation about the extensions, regulation 615. So that language would still stay, and then it's elsewhere in law also. So good question, Patricia.
Perfect. Thank you. Julianne, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm like trying to like lower my hand, turn up the microphone. Yes, so she already answered the questions. I was trying to figure out how to lower my hand.
Got it. All right, so we are going to actually talk about 615 in just a little bit as well. So reworded to look like this, duration of initial educator certification. The initial educator certificate shall be valid for 10 years except, and then it just has the or commissioner's designee, and we've omitted the rest of it. All right, we're going to move into 421, durational shortage area permits. The original language said holds a bachelor's degree from an approved institution unless a bachelor's degree is not required in the certificate area, which the permit is required. This was stated that we should remove this part because it doesn't apply to those folks anyway. It's already stated as such. So is there any discussion or questions for Julianne or Kristen? Go ahead.
Yes, and so the reason it's not really necessary to keep this language is that if it's a teacher that or a applicant that's trying to become certified in one of the technical vocational schools, then they actually can get an interim educator certificate and they don't need to get the DSAP. So there is already a pathway that relates to this, case where a bachelor's degree is not required in that certification area. So I think that's why the recommendation was to remove that section.
And I think you answered Dorothea's question before she even had to ask it. So thank you, Kristen. All right, any other discussion on that? All right, we move down to part 5, reissuance and cross endorsements of certification. The original language said served as initial, and the request was to add in serve under an initial, which would align with other language in regulations and statutes. So it's a minor technical adjustment to the language. Any questions on that? All right, perfect. Keep trucking along. 524C, temporary emergency coaching permit requirements. The request was to change it to holds a valid as opposed to an unexpired. And that was also suggested by SDE. All right, and then, so this is how it would read. Are we good with that? See no hands up, so I'm going to keep going. I see lots of happy little nodding heads. This part, which is 615, they gave us kind of, I actually had them table this because there were so many questions around it that I didn't want to say like, we'll amend it and move this forward. So this particular part was tabled and we will revisit it at the next meeting. So here we have The original said the duration of an initial educator certificate. I won't read it to you. I will let you guys read it. I've highlighted it. So much like the previous one, they were saying to either delete this portion out where it talks about that assessment team review, or remove the whole thing and allow it to sunset. Am I remembering that correctly, Julianne and Kaylin?
This would be the one, excuse me, if they didn't serve under the certificate. Oh, I'm sorry, if they did serve under the certificate for the full 10 years. And that would be, yes. So what would happen is that, so we're getting rid of that assessment team, but the employing district, or if they're an approved non-public school, I mean, it's not, the requirements are different, but just the employing district will verify through the EDS that their service was successful. So that's their way of supporting them for the one additional year. So this is necessary if they served for the entire duration of the certificate and they just haven't finished all requirements to advance.
Thank you. I see Dorothea's hand up. Go ahead, Dorothea. We can't hear you. I'm sorry. No worries.
Sorry. I did have just one question. So we did extend the initial from 7 years to 10 years. Is that correct?
3 years to 10 years.
3, yeah. So I'm wondering why even having this period. I mean, it seems an awful long time to be able to get requirements. But so that was just my question. I mean,
I can't speak for who, when the statute was written. However, I believe the intention was to build in flexibilities. You know, they have 3 years to complete team. That's non-negotiable because that's also in a separate statute. But you know, this statute was written prior at the same time as the statute that was passed saying you have to have a master's degree. So it could have been like a type of flexibility that's been added in. But you know, the work of this group is to find alternative pathways. So you're right, you could technically just, you know, and in a different part of the document, they're going to get into balance of time, which would not also not require this at all. But 10 years is a long time, so that might be a discussion for the board.
Thank you. Kristen?
Right. As it stands, the language either in the original or the amendment both comply with the law. So the law that's on the books right now currently gives this extension language. So you can grant it up to 3 times for a year each time. So if it's something that our board wants to consider in the future, we would need to do a legislative amendment first and then come back and change the regs later. So for me, either keeping the original, which keeps that language that matches with the law about the assessment team, or the amendment that removes that language would both be acceptable. They both, you know, correspond with the law. And then just a thought about like, why are we allowing extensions? And I think part of it is, as was mentioned, the master's degree requirement. You know, my first years of teaching were all when I had a really young kid. And if I only had a few years to get a master's, you know, that's a big challenge. And I think the original intent was to give people a little more flexibility. You know, when especially there is a typo, which I hope was not in the original draft where such has 2 H's, but you know, I think the intent was to give additional time because there also is no backup. So if a person serves under their initial educator certificate for 10 years and they don't meet the requirements and this extension is not available, it's unclear whether they lose their certification and therefore can't teach, right? And that's, we would really want to avoid that. If someone wants to continue teaching and they were certified, we want to make it a possibility that they're able to re-up their certificate and meet the requirements to become professional, have their professional educator certificate.
Thank you. And just so you know, my H keeps sticking on my keyboard. So that was likely my error when I typed this up. So my apologies. I promise it will be fixed before it goes before anybody else. Jen, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I was just echoing what Kristen said about um just being, having flexibilities, having things open. We don't know, so if we have this there, it's not hurting, right? And even if only helps 5 people every year, it could help us keep teachers in classrooms. So that's my thought on that too, because that ran across my mind too, Dorothea. And then I thought, well, so many different situations in this, profession that this could apply to, and it's probably not that many. So why not leave it? That's my thought.
All right. I see Julianne's hand. Thank you, Jen.
And just another backup, I think originally, when you look back, initials were 3 years. And so that's when you needed more of an extension. Now they're 10 years. Now they can get 3 more extensions. Plus there's additional information that we're putting out for people who, if you didn't serve at all, you get a full renewal. So it's just, what about people who've served for a few years in between, but not a full 10 years? And so that it's creating flexibilities so that no matter what situation you're in, there's a pathway that you're not just going to lose the certificate. So I agree with everything that everyone said.
So it sounds like we are leaning towards amending it and removing that blue highlighted section that I have up on the screen and not allowing it to sunset. Is that accurate?
Yes, for
Okay.
me.
Okay. I only added this bottom part for 615 to reference that it is referenced elsewhere in regulations, and that if we did sunset it, then we would have to be amending other areas where the 615 is referenced. So I just wanted, that's what that bottom portion was for the board in terms of that. So with that in mind, I would cater a motion to allow these amended items to move forward to the March State Board of Education meeting.
I'll motion that.
That's Jen Delaney. Do I have a second?
Second, Patrice.
Second.
Hamish, second.
Madam
So many
Chair,
people just vying for second. I believe Hamish was the second, so I appreciate everybody.
Madam Chair,
I
you're frozen,
appreciate the
but
eagerness.
point of order, I believe this is going to have to circle back. Will it not have to circle back to LPDC?
No, ma'am, because we approved it to move forward to
Conditionally?
as amended to the State Board of Education, and that is the document report that you wrote up to send to State Board of Education. We had this emergency meeting to make sure that the board was okay with that. They
Right.
are okay with that, so we've checked all of them off because LPDC said that they're willing to move it forward with the amendments. So it's already gone through LPDC with these amendments, so we're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so with that in mind, we'll move it to a vote. And I'll just quickly call off folks' names and then we're gonna move on. Let's see. So, Dr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Elsa,
Yes.
Tiffany,
Yes.
Jen Delaney,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jenny Graves,
Yes.
Margaret.
Yes.
Mel is still not on the call, correct? Hamish,
Yes.
perfect. Shannon, I don't believe is on the call. Patrice,
Yes.
Dorothea is sitting in for Dr. Rowe.
Yes.
Thank you. Bob,
Yes.
and the Deputy Commissioner is not on the call as well. Thank you. So this passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Next item is kind of going over some of the things that are coming up for our, well, they're coming up in legislation. Dr. Ritchie, do you want to speak about some of these items, or would you like me to kind of just pull them up and go from there, or?
I think if you pull them up, we can talk about them together. I'm not an expert in all of them, but I want to highlight some of the titles that have come through. I think others
Okay.
could speak to them as well.
Perfect. So this one is 105, which was sent to you via email early this morning. It's an act eliminating various occupational professional licenses, permits, certification, registration fees. I believe the last session they had gotten rid of some of the fees. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kaylin. And this specifically would get rid of the professional permit fee. Is that correct? Okay.
So during
So
last
the-
session so during last session effective 10/1/25, they removed all fees for issuance of an initial and renewal, and that also includes the non-renewable and the interim initials. This would remove fees for adding a cross endorsement as well as advancing a certificate to professional.
And this was the governor's ask, I believe, correct? No?
I don't know if that being was it the governor's ask? I don't know, Julie. I didn't see that as a part. I mean, I know it was something he discussed.
Yeah,
I know
my
he has an
understanding is that's where it
executive
came from.
order.
We didn't ask for this. This means we have no money coming in,
Well,
but
I
that's,
mean,
yeah.
he I know he's doing an executive order like soon, like of something different, but this, I believe that it's the senators who were introduced that are listed on the bill, from my understanding.
All right, is there any discussion on this in terms of where our board stands on this? Jenny, go ahead.
I just had a quick question of where do the fees go to? What do the fees fund?
The fees actually go into the general fund at this point. So once they're collected, they're placed in the general fund.
The general fund for the state of Connecticut.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dorothea?
I just want to understand, will this have an adverse impact on CSDE functions? I mean, it sounds like that goes first into direct, the general operations. So it could not get to the CSDE anyway, but I would just like to understand if there's any impact on them.
I can't speak to that specifically. I believe the goal here is to try to lessen the burden on our educators.
Oh, yeah, I totally get that. I
Yeah.
just think sometimes you could also advocate to make sure that those funds are directed in particular ways too, so that the functions of the CSDE are not undermined. So,
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like everything kind of goes into a general fund and they kind of allot their budget from there. So I think it would just be revenue to the state directly that would be impacted, and then how they allocate and fund different organizations. I'm not sure they have like a direct line to saying like, because we're not going to be collecting this, thus we're not going to be funding something specific. But I could be wrong because I don't know the ins and outs of the state budget and how they allocate their funding. Hamish.
Fully supportive of getting rid of this for the reason of educators have a lot of things that go on their plate, whether that's, part of their budget or not. They end up having to reach into their pockets for a whole series of things. And this just feels like it's like, that's this is another piece of that doesn't really provide any value for the educator themselves, other than obviously continuing to work. But I just don't see the benefit to the educator, and nor do I see, I don't see an overall value for like the state in large terms. I know that it raises money for it, but I don't want to do that on the backs of educators who are working really hard and who are frankly underpaid compared to similarly educated workers. So I would like to, definitely try and get rid of this if possible. And I'm thankful for the senators and anyone who wants to get rid of this. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Hamish. So with that in mind, for voting purposes, just so we have on record, do we have anyone who is in favor of keeping the fees on the board currently? Okay, it doesn't appear to be. So the board would be in favor of us writing testimony stating that we are in support of removing the fees.
Yes.
All right, the next one then is going to be one that I believe is near and dear to Dr. Ritchie's heart because she did bring up something similar to this at our last meeting in terms of a math specialist. The bill really only talks about us and the math writing guidelines for the role for math specialist, which would imply that we would have to create a math specialist in there. So I'm going to pull it up right now and share the screen with you. The part that pertains to us is really towards the end, so I'll scroll up a bit. I believe it's line 40. No later than the Commissioner of Education shall designate high school mathematic pathway. Did we say the number was? It was lines 47 to 59.
4B.
It's 47 to 59. So right here, the commissioner in consultation with our board established shall develop guidelines for the role of a mathematics specialist in supporting mathematic interventions in schools. So it doesn't go into great detail about it. It just says that we would come up with guidelines. But that implies that we were going to create an endorsement code then for that and for the guidelines. So I think if we were going to make a recommendation, we might recommend that they amend the bill to state that we are creating an endorsement for that, because I don't really feel like it spells it out very clearly in the bill. Julianne?
It could be that because it's not talking about actually adding an endorsement, it's just guidelines for who can serve in that role. It could be more of like a, how do you feel as far as compliance? Like, oh, I'm a math educator. I'm already certified in math. Do I need something extra to be a math specialist? That would, again, would be guidelines for appropriately placing someone in position, but not necessarily a new endorsement. It may go to the point where it is a new endorsement. If you specifically, my one caution I would say is if we do create an additional endorsement, that's going to make it a little more challenging for districts to place people in that position, because then they can't just have their math teachers do it. They have to have someone who has a specialist endorsement. So that's the trade-off. If you have a guideline for who should be in that role, that gives a little more flexibility to say, this is what we want, without having you to require to get a specific endorsement to do so.
Thank you, Julianne. Hamish?
Question for Julianne, actually. So if we have something like analogous to like the literacy coach or literacy specialist, what does that look like compared to, I mean, like what's the discrepancy right now? There is this literacy specialist, or what does that look like? And
right.
I can imagine a scenario where they look similar and they have similar expectations. But anyway, I love.
So currently you can be a literacy coach and do some intervention as long as you have a grade or subject appropriate endorsement. Whereas if you're going to be an actual remedial reading teacher, you have to have the 102. So this is where I'm imagining looking at, like, maybe they're going to say to be a math interventionist or be a math specialist, do you need to have anything in particular, or do you want to raise it to where it's like you need the equivalent of a 102 but for math? And that's, those are the pros and cons between making it an actual full endorsement versus guidance that says here's what you should have, to be the best pick for someone in that role.
And then,
Sorry, my mouse isn't working, so I apologize. I just want to say that right now it's a lot more flexible. So districts have the ability to put a grade appropriate teacher in there. So if you were an elementary certified teacher and you're strong at teaching math, you could be the math specialist right now for a school without having to have something separate or a math endorsement, for example.
Thank you. Cynthia, go ahead. And then Kate, and then Lauren.
Thank you. I also want to share my excitement for line 55, where there is the talk about potentially having a statewide math initiative focused on learning, just like it was for ReadCon for reading. And that just goes back to the goal of trying to bring everyone together to benefit through shared lifelong learning that's high quality. So really glad to see that math con right there. And just a little bit more about the math specialist. I do think it's more than just a teacher who's in the classroom teaching math. I think there's always more to learn, and you have to elevate the subject of math and the technical parts of it. And I think additional coursework would elevate that person to become the math specialist. And schools would benefit from someone with that expertise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Lauren?
Oh, no, I was just going to add on to what Julianne was saying. So if the board supported this and it went in the direction of a math specialist that was more analogous to the remedial reading teacher or reading consultant, it's important to note that because it doesn't yet exist, no university in the state would have a program leading toward it. So you'd have to build a very long runway before you could require the certificate, because there wouldn't be any institutions currently prepared to offer it. Does that make sense?
Yes, if we went down the road of it being
Yeah.
an endorsement code for an interventionist, right? Is that what I'm
Right.
hearing? I just want to
And
make
if
sure
it
I've got
was going to
clarity on that. Okay.
require a full program, then you would need the institutions to have a long runway to build it.
Okay. All right. Hamish, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I just want to express my support for this overall. I think that it's great that math is getting a focus that, obviously literacy has had a focus in the last few years. And it's important to say that, if we're going to make changes to the math experience for kids, whether it be through tiered intervention structures that are a little more built out from educators who have expertise in this field, whether it's, the other pieces of this, including MathCon, including high school pathways, I think it's good for us to have, statutory authority to do some of those things, because then it allows us to have this really good conversation and be part of it. So I would express my support for this broadly.
So I would say at this point then, for this particular one, we are in support of how it currently is written for creating guidelines for the math specialist, and then kind of delving into that work. And if we wanted additional legislation after the fact, that maybe that's something for the 2027 in terms of like identifying a specific endorsement code, or we can just create an endorsement code and go down that road over time within regulations. Is that accurate? Okay. And the board is in favor of this particular language as it stands. All right. Is there anyone who's not in favor from the board on the language as it stands? All right. So let's go ahead and move to the next one on that list, which was, I believe it's SB 5217, an act establishing the Commissioner of Education Department, head of the department. That is and isn't really on our list. I was really just putting it out there for you all to be aware of. Patrice and I were at the last Board of Ed meeting, and we listened to a lot of conversation by the State Board of Education, and there was a study done on what that may or may not look like. You might want to speak to your own organizations to see where they stand on that and provide some public testimony. It isn't directly related to our board in terms of our charge, but I did want to put it on everyone's radar that was out there. So I'm not going to necessarily put it up now, but if Patrice wants to speak to that as well. We were both at that meeting and we were a little floored by what we heard. And we wanted to put it on your radar, as it does affect us in the long term in terms of like how we do business potentially. But it isn't directly education preparation and certification. Patrice, go ahead.
Thanks. I would agree it's not appropriate for this group to take a position on this. The bill as it is currently drafted does not go as far as the advisory State Board of Education, which certainly caused a great deal of concern in discussion at the last State Board meeting. But it could be the first step down a path which would provide for less
I think you froze.
Public input.
Thank you, Patrice. So I was really just to kind of put it on your radar and your organization's radar in case you guys wanted to, read deeper into that. I look at a lot of bills and I don't always realize all of the bills that are out there. And that was one that we were a little surprised by the conversation and what came out of that. Sarah, go ahead.
Just a technical question. What's the name of the document where these new bills, or is this in the email that was sent earlier today?
It was an email that was sent earlier today and they're all
Okay.
linked. Yeah.
Thank you.
The next one is an act concerning stipends for student teachers, House Bill 5216. And I will share that screen with you now. Was that a excitement there, Kristen, or were you stretching?
No, one of my coworkers is going home, so the same
Gotcha.
bye.
So if you want to take a moment to read that over and see if there's kind of see where we stand on the stipends for student teaching and any discussion around it. Right. Dorothea?
Sorry. I haven't gotten any of the documents, but I know that our people at UConn were talking about this. We're supportive of it. And this is a case where last year they had some legislation that was trying to give stipends for student teaching, but there was no funding mechanism. And so that is why we were against it last year, because it was unclear how that would actually be funded. But here it seems that the state is going to fund these stipends. So we were supportive of that.
All right, it's good to hear. Thank you. And the background as well as the change in position based on that information, right? Is there anyone in the group that, oh, Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, I also think this wording makes more sense than there is currently a way that if you volunteer and student teaching counts as volunteering, that you can get paid a certain amount of money, but it's not really related to like the hours that you worked. And I don't really like the idea that, student teaching is volunteering. I like the wording of this bill where they're saying it's a stipend for the work that you're doing as you're becoming a fully credentialed teacher. So I would be in support of this bill as a member of this board.
Is there anyone on the call who is not in support of this particular bill that we should have discussion around? All right, so our position is that we are in support for the stipends. Sounds good. And then our last one, I believe, is Senate Bill Act concerning aspiring educators to expand eligibility under the Aspiring Educators Scholarship Program. I think that was on the docket last session. Does anyone have any strong feelings one way or the other for this particular one? We were discussing a scholarship ourselves, and that has been tabled to the next budgetary cycle by the Legislative Policy Development Committee. Let's go ahead with Jen Delaney first, then Hamish, and then Kristen.
Hi, yes, just in support of this, I have 9 candidates who were able to apply for and earn an award for this scholarship, and it was just a huge help for them. And I hope that we can continue with it, given that there's just so many expenses that go with training to be a teacher, and particularly at ARC. Our average candidate is from the ages of 35 to 55 years old, and they have children and they have mortgages and they live in Connecticut and they're going to stay in Connecticut and they're going to participate in school districts in and around Alliance districts, especially if they graduated from an Alliance district. The chance that it's just a good investment is what I'm trying to say. They're not leaving after they're done with the programs that's at least here, because they're from here and they're going to stay here. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Jen. Hamish.
Hi, yes. I just wanted to say that I, obviously appreciate the work being done on this, and I think that it's really important to continue to expand eligibility for it. The original impetus of this bill was stemming from the Increasing Educator Diversity Oversight Council and some of the work that we've done on increasing diversity, and so we want to make sure that whatever language is there is ensuring that we are expanding, but we're also expanding purposefully. So we don't obviously want to exclude folks, but we also want to not lose the sight of the original intent of the legislation. So we are saying, broadly, I don't think the Oversight Council has said specifically what we want, but I think we don't want to lose a focus of including and propping up the work that we've done to further diversify the educator workforce. So supportive overall, but we'll also want to make sure that we are doing the right thing with the right investments that we have. So thanks for this, and we'll be supporting generally and broadly, ensuring that people who need scholarships are able to get them so that they can pursue education regardless. So thanks.
Thank you, Hamish. Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, to Hamish's point, that they left in language under section 2AD, where it says, those subgroups of the population that are underrepresented in the teaching profession in the state, it can be a way that the commissioner considers the scholarship. So it did leave in a section, or I think it actually added that section, because it removed the high school graduation requirement from an alliance district from earlier. So, the requirement that you be a graduate of an alliance district would also leave out young teachers of color who graduated from other districts, right? So I think this is a good expansion. I do think in terms of the scholarship that we talked about, that there's still a separate need for that scholarship, and that this one is for aspiring educators going into a four-year institution of higher education, whereas ours would be for current educators who are looking to cross doors or get their master's or required coursework for their professional educator certificate. So it's kind of a different pool. But I do think this matches like a purposeful expansion of the scholarship program that'll reach more high school graduates.
Thank you, Kristen. Dorothea?
Again, I'm sorry because I didn't have the language, but I did want to make sure, and it looks like it was addressed. But last year we had concerns that by focusing only on shortage areas, you would actually not be able, that would eliminate a lot of students who are from underrepresented groups. But it looks like that language has been addressed. Looks like that's been cleared up.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone who from the board who is opposed to this particular bill? All right. So what I propose is that we will write up a very brief public testimony, just saying the board reviewed these items and that the board is in support of these particular items, with the exception of obviously the commissioner one, because that's really not our purview, but the ones that we did review and have a discussion around. I can send you the draft of that. I do think that public participation already happened today for the math curriculum one. But we can still submit written testimony saying that we support that because that comes afterwards anyways. And any public testimony in terms of hearings, if you plan to participate on Mondays, which most of these are slated for Monday, then you would have to sign up, I believe, by Wednesday. And I included that information at the bottom of the email on how to sign up for public participation or to submit written testimony. But I will draft something this weekend and send it to you all. just to kind of look over and see if there's any technical edits that need to be done. But it will be a very brief. The board reviewed these bills on this date and the board is in support of them. And I'll list the different stakeholder organizations that we represent as part of the board so that they have an understanding of who that also means. Does anyone have any objection to that? All right, then I think we can call this a meeting. Thank you so much for meeting so that we can ensure that those things move forward. 6:15 will have to go back to the LPDC, whereas the other ones were amend and move forward. So that they're all set for the State Board of Education's meeting in March, which I will probably see Patrice again for a full day at that meeting. Again, thank you for your flexibility. In terms of any other bills that come up, because they don't want to call us into a special meeting every single time, I might send out just a quick survey with the links to those bills to get your input as to whether or not you are for or if you have any concerns about them. And then I'll draft something and send it out to the board for review before we submit any testimony on that. I want to honor your time and I appreciate the flexibility in you all coming together today. So thank you very much and stay warm and cozy. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, that was Dr. Ritchie. Can I get a second? That was Jenny Graves. All right, we are adjourned by general consensus. Stay warm. Hope your
Bye.
commutes are safe this evening. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.